All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the last LISSA meeting of the year. So tonight we have Gladys, who is a former LISSA president, joining us. So Gladys, would you mind introducing yourself, your current title, and what book you're reading right now?
Sure. My name is Gladys Cepeda, and I am currently I'm a bilingual youth services librarian, but I'm currently the branch manager of my library that I work at, the North Bergen Public Library. And I just finished yesterday, Demon Copperhead. I'm an avid audiobook listener and graphic novel reader. So I just finished that Demon Copperhead, and I just finished a graphic novel whose name escapes me at the moment, but it was really a really good book. I just came across it, through, I forget who recommended it, and it was actually available right away. So I was like, oh, I'm going to listen to it now.
I love when that happens. My mom just started that this weekend,
It's
so
great. It's such a good book. I highly recommend it.
I'll have to read it after her. Like I have to know when she returns it to the library so that I can pick it up. All right, so how did you decide on a career in librarianship?
So, I actually started working at a library, after leaving teaching. I was a preschool teacher for about 13 years or so, and I was looking for a career change, but I still wanted to work with kids. So I started working at the Hackensack Library part-time. And while I was there, I think it was 5 or 6 years in, I can't remember now. The next step would have been to become a librarian, and I didn't know anything about librarianship going into it. Like, I was brand new to it. All I knew is I worked with kids and I wanted to continue working with kids. So I found out that in order to be a librarian, you needed a library degree. And I'm a little bit old school in the fact that I wanted an in-person program. And living in North Jersey, Rutgers made the most sense. So I applied. And at first, I was a little bit of a curmudgeon about having to go back to school, if only because I'd already had a master's and I'd been out of school for a little bit over 10 years at the time. So I was like, why do I have to go back? But then I'm really super glad I went back, and I have my MI degree. I can't say enough good things about my time at Rutgers. It really was so great, and I'm so glad that I got the degree and I did it.
Yeah, how was that transition going back to school after being out for so long?
I was such a curmudgeon. I really like the number one reason I applied to Rutgers was because I needed in-person instruction, because I had my master's from Montclair State. So we rarely did stuff on Blackboard at the time. This was like in 2009 when I graduated in 2010 with my MA. And then of course, with my luck, the pandemic happened. So I had no choice but to move online. But the great thing about it was we were able to do, I always forget it. Is it asynchronous or synchronous? The one where you do it online, but
Together,
okay,
yeah,
yeah,
synchronous.
through Zoom. So I actually really enjoy that. It wasn't um as heinous as I thought it would be. One of my classes, we actually met for 3 hours, and in the beginning I thought it would be a lot, but it just ended up being really great to be able to connect and do that through Zoom. So I actually didn't mind it too much once I got over myself and really embraced online learning.
It's interesting because now, since the pandemic, it's pretty much all online. I think I tried to take one class in person, but not enough people signed up, so it went
Okay.
online.
That's sort of had started to happen a little bit right before the pandemic. There were some sections that if there weren't enough students in it, it would be transitioned into online. So, my classmates and I would always be like, what class are you going to take? Are you interested in this class? Can you take this time? So we could sort of get like a small group of us to sign up for the class. So we can sort of guarantee that the class would be given in person.
That's smart.
More in the fall.
Yeah, usually in
We're
the fall.
moving more into,
More in person.
there'll be more in person in the fall.
Oh,
Yes,
that's
in
good.
the, yeah.
they're
So
trying hard. And one of the biggest obstacles is you can't have international students in an online program. They have
Yes,
to be in
yeah.
residence. So,
That and we had a few out-of-state students actually in a lot of our classes. So they had spoken about how grateful they were that the program was able to transition online so that they were able to take our classes that they normally wouldn't have been able to. But
yeah,
selfishly, I was like, in person, please.
yeah, I definitely like some classmates and I myself like appreciate being able to do it online, and the asynchronous is helpful, fitting it in where I can, but it also not having the in-person part, you don't have that same sense of community, which is why, LISSA is great to be able to meet with classmates and everything. So
Yep. Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree.
So what was your favorite part about the Rutgers program, and what was kind of something that maybe you struggle with just with MI school in general?
Well, my favorite part, I enjoyed the whole program as a whole. Like I really went into librarianship not knowing anything. So just being able to learn, from the theory behind just the theory behind how people research, just community engagement, just every class I took, I really got the most out of because I knew nothing before going into librarianship. The only thing that was a little bit, I guess, lacking was I knew I wanted to work with kids. So when you when you leave with an MI, it's mostly geared toward adult reference librarians. I know Rutgers offers the school library track, so I did take some of those classes, if only because they were more geared toward children's stuff. But every single class I took, I learned so much. I had a class with Nancy that community class I took with her that I still use some of the handouts we had in that class. Everything I learned was just so practical and still applicable to my job today. So it just only more children's classes. But
where are you now? Like,
I'm at the North Bergen Public Library.
oh, you were there when you were a student.
No, I was at Hackensack.
Oh, did you write about it in community engagement?
I wrote about the Hackensack Public Library.
Oh, okay, okay.
We were with Hackensack Meridian. That's what sort of, yeah, we were big partner. I mean, they're also big partners with North Bergen Public Library. I mean, I know children's librarians are a little bit few and far between. There are more reference librarians. But even the school library classes I took were great too. I really learned a lot. Just with literature, I didn't, as someone who went into libraries not knowing what librarians do, I was like, well, I like reading. So like, how hard could it be? And if I read a single sentence of a single book while I'm at work, then that would be a really big deal because I don't get to read at all.
Yeah, I took some of the school library classes too, and they were really helpful. And it totally opens your eyes to, what librarians actually do and what goes into it. So
Yeah, there's definitely so many misconceptions, like everyone's always like, oh, it's so quiet here. And I'm like, well, for the 5 minutes that you came in, maybe, or, or it sounds like, I'm sure you get to read all day. And I'm like, I've never once read for work. The dream one day.
exactly. So do you have any advice for current students in the program?
I would say honestly, just enjoy it. Take every class that interests you, the topics. I really cannot say enough about how much I learned. Everything I took away from all my classes, like I'm one of those people that kept all the articles after classes ended. Not necessarily maybe my papers, but definitely a lot of the articles I read. I had a class with Professor Lagarde that I still use some of the tools that she had as learn in the class, like Padlet and Wakelet. There were because we are a joint program, because there's the different tracks with data and school librarianship, and then the information one. I did take a couple data classes that were really interesting. Like I'd taken a social media one, where I was the only library student. Everyone else was in the data program. So they were really funny. They were like, why are you in this class? And I was like, social media, libraries, it's a thing. It makes sense. But so it was just, I took so much from it. I learned so much. I joined LISSA. I made so many great connections. You know, I had a core group of classmates and that I'm still friends with today, that will just, get together and talk about our libraries and our different positions and our different communities. Even just to vent, because librarianship is such a unique job that I think only other librarians can. I mean, this is true for a lot of professions, obviously, right? Like only doctors can know the stress that other doctors are on, or like the nuances of your profession. But I don't think people realize what a big aspect of librarianship is, not public service, but public facing, just dealing with the public. So it's nice to be able to commiserate with other librarians about, who we've dealt with or what's going on in our libraries. Because even though we all work, we're all librarians, every township is so different and every community is so different, and the needs are just so varying, but sometimes they're very similar. So it always helps to connect with my fellow classmates and stuff.
And obviously you were already working at a library while you were in school, but how was the transition going from being in school and then to full-time librarianship? And you said you're now a branch manager, so how was that transition?
So the transition, it actually helped that, I know it's funny, but it actually helped that we went online, because the libraries also went virtual, but so it was great to have that comparison of being in school virtually and then working virtually. So it just, made me be comfortable in the virtual world, even though I was resistant to it. And even now, we're still using Zoom, and I don't think there really is any going back to not using Zoom for accessibility purposes. The other thing, the one thing that helped me transition as well, that made it a seamless transition, was I networked so much. Like, they really are network heavy, and that was new to me. I hadn't really done that before as a preschool teacher. But I was able to make so many great connections, so that it just helped have this create this safety net for myself. Like, I could always reach out to Professor Lagarde or, Professor Nancy. Like, there's still, like, I'm sure if I emailed you, or I emailed Marie Radford, like, everyone is always so open and welcoming and ready to offer advice. I also had interned as a Sky grad assistant at the time too. So I was just all over the place. I was like, if I'm going to school again, I'm doing everything, because I'm not going back. I was like, sorry, Mom, I'm not getting a PhD. This is it. So I really deep dove into being in school and being involved in as many things as I could be.
What recommendations do you have for networking, even, while we're in school or once we're out of school? You mentioned connections with other libraries. How do you keep those?
Honestly, it's just, I know it seems counterintuitive, because I feel like I'm bothering people sometimes, and I don't want to be like, oh, I just met you, but but it really is that, like, I've hosted several mingles for Skype. I've helped with that. I've helped them out. So I always drop my LinkedIn into the chats, and I really don't mind connecting with someone, or getting an email. I'm sure Nancy can speak to it too. We're always willing to give advice. Librarianship it's a very tight-knit community. Like, it's a very small world. So, when even in the library I work now, a couple of my coworkers are going to start Rutgers soon, and I can't wait to see, like, who they have and what the classes are like. So as someone who's very anxious and always feels like, I don't know, I don't want to bother someone, I really have learned to just send a quick email, just, hi, how are you? If you're amenable to helping, me answer a couple questions, or I have an inquiry, and I've never received a no before. So it doesn't hurt to just send that message and just say hi.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I mean, obviously, I met you at the Sky Mingle and a bunch of other, people in the library world, and I found it really helpful. So, okay, so we're after our conversation with you, we're gonna look ahead to next year and our openings on our executive board. So, can you share some reasons why students should get involved with LISSA specifically? What you enjoyed about it?
I think my favorite thing about LISSA specifically was the camaraderie. I always say that word wrong. I can't pronounce the R's. With our other board members, because we were also in this unique experience together. So it was just like trying to figure out how to navigate this online world and how to transition, trying to create community virtually. So it was great to be able to have that support system in there, already available to me, because we were all interested in being librarians one way or another. And the networking, like they really made networking so much easier too, because it was like, oh, I know a friend of a friend who works at this medical library, or my roommate's sister works at a, medical library. So it just really is, it just helped cement that networking and the importance of networking. And it did make it like, I cannot stress enough how small library world is. Especially like public librarianship and stuff. I work in North Bergen, we're part of the Buckles Consortium. So a lot of Buckles librarians went to Rutgers. So it's easy to be like, oh, you were there. Who did you take for this? What did you do for that? And it's just like, it instantly puts you at ease. You're like, okay, they understand where I'm coming from. They know, like, I don't have to explain anything. It's just, there's such an easiness to it.
And then this is my last question is, so if anyone else has questions, get ready to ask them. You can put them in the chat if you want. But so are there any skills that you learned at Rutgers that come up a lot, or are there things that you're seeing in your work now that you would recommend, focusing on developing those skills?
One of the biggest skills I learned too was time management, especially when we moved into the virtual world. It's hard, it's kind of easy to lose timing when you're online. You're like, oh, when you're doing, is it Monday? Has it been a week? What day is it? So that kind of ebbs into one another. So I really learned a lot of time management. I learned how to collaborate not only in person, but virtually. It's just, for me, being virtual was such a huge shift that it really helped me. It was almost like I didn't know what to do, but everyone was so great and everyone was very patient. We were all figuring this out together. We started doing breakout rooms and stuff. So it was just, I learned a lot about patience and collaboration. And then I can't stress the networking enough. It really is. In the beginning, when we take the 0 credit class, that first one where you have to create your LinkedIn, you're always like, oh, why do we have to do this? And it's like, no, it makes total sense as to why we have to do this and why I keep it up to date, and have people reach out to me through there, and just to see what's going on in libraries, across the US.
Does anybody else have a question? Yeah, Nancy.
So I'm eager to hear whether or not you've gotten involved with professional associations.
I unfortunately haven't. I did take advantage of being the NJLA one and ALA student pricing, because that was great. You can't beat that. So I did that for as long as I could. And then I just haven't kept up with those. I get a lot of the emails through thankfully we keep our Rutgers email address, which is great. because I still get all the listserv stuff through there. So I constantly check it, just to see what's going on. I was able to go to the ALA conference in 2021.
Where was it?
The one in DC.
Well, there
think-
was one in 19 and then there was one in 22.
Okay, so maybe that's the
That
one
was
that
the
I went
first one in person again.
Yes, then that's the one I went to. Yeah, because we're
Oh,
2024.
so you did go.
I did go, yes. That was the only one I've been to, and I've gone to NJLA once or twice while I was still a student, which was great. So I mean, key for networking. But I do, and the one that I did belong to the longest was Reforma, which is the Latino specific library for librarians. So I still try to keep in touch. Every time I'm like, I'm going to re-up my membership. And then next thing I know, it's like, May 2024.
So, but you haven't gotten involved with the children's librarians in NJL,
No,
for example.
no, not, I
Yeah.
keep every time, Nancy, I'm like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to join. And then then work happens.
But
And
you're
I
not in
get,
school anymore, so
I
you don't
know,
have
but I
time to
get
vote. So now it's
sidetracked.
time for NJLA.
I get sidetracked. You know how the public is, Nancy.
No.
And in North Bergen, I say this all the time. I speak Spanish, so I'm fluent in Spanish. I've never spoken more Spanish in my life than I have in this job. Even when I like grew up in Peru, and I still feel like I've spoken more Spanish now. Because when I answer the phone, I'll like say my whole spiel in English, but they always, answer back in Spanish, and I'm like, oh, okay, hold on, I got to switch over.
That's great, though, to hear that the Spanish-speaking community is
Oh.
making such good use of the library.
Yes, one of the big reasons I was drawn to North Bergen and why I left Hackensack was because they have such huge engagement with their Hispanic population. Like the Hispanic population here has no sort of qualms coming to the library, which was something new for me. Because there is always that trepidation with the Hispanic community coming to use the library because they see it as like a government entity, which I forget that we are a subsidiary, but because it's not at the forefront of my head until we get our paycheck and it says like City of North Bergen or something. Then you're like, oh yes, I work for the government. But otherwise, it's not something that, I didn't inherently think about. But here they have no qualms, hesitations to just come in and ask whatever they need help with. Sometimes they're a little too trusting. I'm like, please don't give me any more personal information. I don't need it. I don't need to know. They're like, you want my password? I'm like, no, that's okay. Thank you. You can just type it in yourself.
Daria, did you have a question?
Oh yeah, I have a more specific question about the class that you brought up earlier. I was also thinking about taking that data science social media class. Can you talk about what the content was like? Like,
Sure.
did you have to like make social media, or is it more like
No.
you read about social media?
So I did, Daria, it was the same thing when I registered for the class. It was more the back end of social media, like how and why they choose like stock photos, like the stock photos at the dollar store. I would have just thought they're stock photos, like whatever. But there's actually some marketing behind those stock photos and why they choose those stock. So it was really interesting to learn that aspect of like the more technical behind the scenes. So I did find it really interesting. I of course did all my papers and stuff with an eye towards libraries and how it affects librarians. So I did find it really interesting. It was a little data heavy. We didn't necessarily create an app, but we had to create some sort of algorithm or something like that. I can't remember, but it was really interesting. And I forget who, I think it was Professor Vivek. I think he taught it when I took it, and he was great too. And he was slightly fascinated that I, as a librarian, wanted to take the class. I mean, this was pre-COVID, so we were still sort of dabbling in social media as librarians, and now everything is, social media driven.
Yeah, I'm really interested in that aspect of it in terms of like reaching out to the public and stuff and keeping in contact with people. And I have another question too. So what's like your biggest goal right now in your role? Like what are you working towards?
Oh my goodness. I just take a day at a time. I'm like just one day at a time. My biggest goal, so what we have here, in North Bergen is uniquely situated that in the branch that I work at, we are located within the recreation center. So technically you would think we would have this like built-in crowd, but we don't. We have, or at least I have a very hard time drawing people in, whether it's because of timing, like especially with programming. Some our ESL classes are our biggest draws. We have a grant through the state of New Jersey. So they do some classes at this location, and those classes will always be packed. So I'm like, well, how do I get them to stay and bring their kids that they know? But that's, so my goal is always trying to work towards just improving the attendance in our programs. But even if I get 3 people that come to my kid, like my baby laptop, I have 1 baby that comes, and I always do it. And their mom is always so funny because she's like, you just do it like, I'm like, yeah, it's the baby and I, it's fine. 1 baby, it's okay. I'm like, tell your other baby friends. I'm like, please bring them. But that, and just to the importance of like figuring out what your community needs. Like Nancy's community class was really so helpful in trying to figure that out specifically, like what are the needs that aren't being met? How do I get everyone in here? And the hard part for me with the kids is the community that the recreation center is in, is they work like really long hours. So I mean, the kids, probably would go straight home after school. But we do try to get into the schools. We offer individualized like reading appointments to help them. We try to offer a lot of bilingual or ESL programming for both kids, teens, and adults, because that's what's needed here. But I take it one day at a time because I don't know how it's now May. And we'll be thinking about summer reading, which is, I don't know how it got here.
Yeah, I always hear about like the public libraries and the school libraries, and a lot of places don't really have a relationship, but it sounds like that's something you're trying to develop or curate.
So we did have, and this is sort of where the pandemic kind of took its toll in North Bergen, was it kind of was hard to do in school meetings, obviously in school, anything, but when I came in, it was just my supervisor and myself. We were the 2 children's librarians. So once I was brought in, we started once again going to the schools, doing the presentations, and we're now here in this location. We have like one of the schools down the street, and we've done a better job of having them come visit the library. So they will just walk over for about an hour. I'll do a small presentation, and then they'll just get to hang out and read here. Or it really is a great space because it is part recreation center. So we do have a soccer field in the roof, which is out in the open. So the kids love to go upstairs to read outside. So they'll do that for like the drop everything and read program. The STEAM kids will come over, pick out books, and then they'll go read outside. So they really like to do that a lot.
I love that. That's awesome. Any other questions?
Do you have any advice for starting your first library position? Because I'm starting my first library position in August. Not as a librarian, just as a library assistant, but it's going to be my first time working in a library ever. So just wondering if you have any advice.
I was honestly, Daria, just take it one day at a time. And I realized, like how front facing we are, even if you're not a librarian, because once you start working at a library, people be like, oh, I need help with this book, or can you help me print, or I need some change. And it's just, you're constantly being asked for things. So it's kind of like when I leave, I need like 15 minutes to decompress. I'm like, please, no one talk to me. I need to I need to just be for a second because it is, you know, outside of the books, it is a very front-facing profession, but it really is great. Like, I love all the kids. They always come back, you know, they're like, Miss Gladys, or even the adults. Like, I was helping a patron today with a job application, and she was just so grateful that I was able to help her with copying and pasting. It's funny because, you know, the things you don't learn, even though we have in technology, that technology class where we create our website, 95% of the questions are like, how do I copy and paste? Or like, how do I insert something into a document? Or how do I print from my phone? And if you have an Apple phone, familiarize yourself with a Droid. Or if you have a Droid, vice versa. Because I have a Droid, and then they just give me their iPhones, and I'm like, I don't know how to do this. I'm like, can you bring up your email? I don't know. But everyone is so grateful for any help and anything you're willing to do for them. And it's great. It really is. I couldn't be happier with the profession I've chosen now. I'm really very fortunate that I've been able to have two professions that I really have enjoyed and feel fulfilled in. So I really can't complain, but I can't say enough good things. Some days, I mean, it's tiring, but it really is very rewarding. Everyone is so, so eternally thankful for everything we offer them, especially because it's free. They're always so shocked. They're like, it's free? And then they want to give me a tip. And I'm like, oh, no, no, no. We don't accept tips, but thank you.
All right, that's awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome, of course. And good luck. Congrats. Yay.
Yeah, I still have 2 more years in this program, but yeah, so
It really is great. I know I keep saying it and I sound like a broken record, but I really couldn't have been luckier with finding libraries and being in this profession. It's been so much more fulfilling than I could have imagined because we just do so much more than I could have ever thought.
Daria, what library did you get a job at?
Heightstown Public Library.
Oh, great. My
Part of
husband used to live in Heightstown. Heightstown's a
Oh, yeah?
really nice community.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
part of the Mercer County
Right,
Consortium. Yeah,
right. Good for you. Congrats.
thank you.
No more Whole
And yeah,
Foods?
actually, networking was huge. I reached out to one of the professors to help me get the job. So. But yeah, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Like, very excited. And my background is in retail, so I'm very familiar
so-
with being a
Whole
customer
Foods
facing.
lady.
Yeah.
Although, Daria, I will have to say the customer service in libraries is very unique to librarianship. Like, I cannot stress enough that, like, I worked at the mall, I've been a preschool teacher, I worked at a camp counselor, I've been a babysitter. And sometimes I'm just like, I don't get it. I don't understand this customer service dynamic. It's just, but it's great.
So Grace, you just graduated.
I did,
Yeah.
yeah. And yeah, just like
Yay.
Gladys said, like I love this program. I learned so much. So I wish there were even more classes that I wanted to take. Like I feel like I could keep going.
Do you have any job in the library world lined up?
Not yet. So I'm just staying in my job right now at Rutgers,
Rutgers. Oh.
yeah, so we'll see down the line.
Let me
Grace, what are you interested in?
In public library, probably youth services. Yeah, that's kind of where I used to work in schools as well. So I kind of had that shift where I was like, I don't really want to be a teacher, but
It's the best of both worlds.
yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Gladys. It was really helpful. And I appreciate you giving us your time on this Monday night. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was a very full circle moment. So thank you. And you have my email, so feel free to reach out whenever. I'm always here, literally at work.
Thank you, Carmen.